So now that the Middle-earth saga is probably done, until the inevitable reboot comes, I'm here to go through all 6 films in this series and give my mini reviews. At the end, I'll decide which is the best and which is the worst. Also, spoilers ahead for all of these films. If you haven't seen one, I've put the times of the movies in the description so you can skip around as you please. Alright, let's get to it. So let's start off with the classic, The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, to be clear, I didn't see this in cinemas, but from my understanding, this was a huge event film when it came out. The Lord of the Rings books are beloved by a lot of people, and I'm gonna have to come out with an unpopular opinion and say that I don't love them. I like them for sure, but they just aren't as mind-blowing to me as they are to most people. That being said, I was excited to watch this because I just enjoy this kind of fantasy epic. And no other film series fits the term fantasy epic like Lord of the Rings. Firstly, this trilogy's casting is just completely spot on. I can't go through everyone, but I cannot think of anyone in this movie who wasn't great as their character. Elijah Wood, who seems like a great guy in general, is great as Frodo, but my 2 favorites would have to be Gandalf and Aragorn. Gandalf, because he's a lot of fun to watch and Ian McKellen nails the role, and Aragorn, because he's just this grizzled badass who has to come and take back what's his, and Viggo Mortensen is just perfect in that. The villain in this, Sauron, is also really threatening and interesting. Now, something I have to address with this movie is the world. Peter Jackson did a phenomenal job of establishing this universe. It feels very real, very gritty, and this movie just completely immerses you in it. It also has a good sense of scale. Unlike some movies I'll talk about later, in this you really feel like these huge things are that huge. And the effect this world has on you is in no small part thanks to the music by Howard Shore. That music fits this world perfectly. The special effects in this are also outstanding. This has something that a lot of movies are doing nowadays, and that is a blend of practical effects and CGI. And Peter Jackson's cinematography really makes this feel epic. The camera work with those sweeping shots is amazing. This film has more of a serious tone, but it finds the right moments to lighten the mood by adding in humor. There's no annoying character who's just there for comic relief. Everyone has some purpose. I have to point out that one of the best scenes in this movie, and one of the best in the entire series, is Gandalf versus the Balrog. The Balrog has got to be one of the coolest fantasy monsters of all time. Luckily, Gandalf is one of the coolest fantasy characters of all time. I don't really have many complaints with this film. The one thing I can think of is that it's a little long, but hey, it's Lord of the Rings. They're kinda known for that. So overall, this is a great start to the trilogy. It sets up the world and the characters in a way most other series couldn't do with 5 movies. And I'm going to give Fellowship of the Ring a 9.4 out of 10. So now we've come to the middle chapter, The Two Towers. This movie is really good, don't get me wrong, but there are only really 2 things that stood out to me. 1, the Battle of Helm's Deep. The Battle of Helm's Deep is one of the coolest movie battle scenes ever, and maybe just one of the coolest movie scenes ever. It is the perfect combination of epic and fun. It has enough grit to feel real and intense, but it has enough kind of over-the-top stuff to keep it from getting really dark. It is the perfect fantasy action scene in my opinion. That is the main thing I'll remember about this movie. The other thing is Gollum. Gollum is probably the most interesting character in this film. Andy Serkis is just fantastic in this. He has that mocap thing down, and this really opened the floodgates for other motion capture performances. But Gollum's character in itself is just mesmerizing and really memorable. Sometimes he's terrifying, but then sometimes you feel bad for him, and he's just a really well-portrayed character. He works really well with Sam and Frodo, and I think this is an Oscar-worthy performance. As far as the negatives go, Merry and Pippin's side quest with the Ents does drag on for a little bit. It's not awful by any means, but maybe it could have been done a little bit quicker. So in the end, this is a really good continuation of the story, with more or less everything the first film does right. However, besides Gollum and the Battle of Helm's Deep, nothing really stands out to me. That being said, those 2 things are really awesome, and hey, the rest of the movie is still thoroughly entertaining. I'll give Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers a 9 out of 10. So finally, here we are at the conclusion of this trilogy. A lot of the time, these kinds of movie wrap-ups can disappoint to no end, but this one was pulled off pretty amazingly. Firstly, this film has a lot of emotional power moments, more so than the others in my opinion. One is where Faramir, I believe, is charging towards these orcs, and it's in slow-mo, and there's that song. It's just pretty emotional. Through shadow, to the edge of night. But I have to address this. This is a bit weird for me, but I have never cried as hard in any other movie as I did in this one. I'm not entirely sure why. I liked the characters in the movies, but I wasn't a super mega fan of the series. But at the point where Sam is giving the speech to Frodo on the mountain, I just started bawling. It was just really powerful, with the great acting and the music and just how pure that moment feels.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you! Come on!
From that point onward until the end of the movie, I was genuinely just crying my eyes out. And this entire movie on the whole is just so epic and spectacular. This is the culmination of all the stuff we've seen in those previous 2. It's built up to the epicness of this. I've already used the word epic like 10 times, but it is the one word to describe these movies. This has so many memorable scenes. There are the battles, there's the giant spider scene, there's the For Frodo moment.
for Frodo.
And this has one of the best movie speeches of all time. If you know me at all, you know I love a speech that can really get me pumped. And this movie does that like no other.
An hour of wolves and shattered shields when the age of men comes crashing down. But it is not this day. This day we fight.
It's right up there with the Independence Day speech, which is really saying something for me. The whole part at the end where Frodo almost turns evil and then Gollum bites his finger off and dies with the ring. That whole thing was really cool. And people always complain about this movie having about a dozen endings. Sure, on repeat viewings that might get tedious, but having only seen this once, I didn't have a problem with those. They were emotional, and it's a long series, so it needs a long ending. So Lord of the Rings: Return of the King is the best conclusion to this trilogy I could have asked for. It is a near perfect movie for me, and I'm giving it a 9.9 out of 10.
By all that you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand, men of the West!
The misty mountains cold.
Now, I'd just like to put this out there first. I really love the Hobbit book. I haven't read it in years, but I remember thinking it was fun and exciting, and I personally enjoyed it more than the LOTR books. Unpopular opinion, I know, but whatever. And so I was really excited for this movie adaptation. Even though I was skeptical about turning it into 3 movies, I went in optimistic, and my expectations were more or less met. Let's talk about it. There is one thing that I can say I definitively love about this Hobbit trilogy through and through. Whether you love or hate these movies, there is no denying that Martin Freeman is amazing as Bilbo Baggins. I really enjoy Martin Freeman in pretty much everything he's in, and he is perfect as this character. He has great comedic timing, and he's just a lot of fun to watch. Best thing about this trilogy for sure. As far as the rest of the cast, it's good. Gandalf is back, and he's still pretty fantastic. But then we have the dwarves, and look, they aren't terrible by any means, but I just couldn't get attached to any of their characters. Maybe a little bit to Thorin, but a lot of the time, he was just kind of a jerk. The dwarves weren't bad, they just weren't great. As far as the tone goes, this is a lot less serious than Lord of the Rings. It's still got some of that in there, but this is more of a romp than a fantasy epic to me, which kind of works. What doesn't really work is that a lot of this movie doesn't feel real. I mentioned earlier that I believed more or less everything I saw in those movies, but here, it's a lot less gritty and practical. There's a lot more CG, and everything looks very polished and shiny and just not as real. Specifically that goblin scene, which is cool enough, but I just didn't feel like the dwarves were actually standing there with those goblins. I do have to say though, the whole riddle segment with Gollum was pretty spectacular. Seeing Gollum interact with Martin Freeman's Bilbo was just a lot of fun. Now, my main negative really lies in the fact that this was split into 3 movies. Splitting one book into multiple films hasn't worked out very well so far. Harry Potter pulled it off pretty well. I enjoy Deathly Hallows Part 1 more than most. But besides that, there's Twilight, Hunger Games, and now this. I'm not saying this can't ever work. For example, I think it'll work with Avengers 3, because that's not adapting one specific book, and it can justifiably be 6 hours long. But with this, there was no reason to do this. 2 movies, maybe. I can see that working. But 3, this movie is kind of poorly paced. It's a bit slow, and that's because this needed to be stretched out. Don't get me wrong, I like this film, and I enjoy this trilogy on the whole, but I just think this business practice should go away. So overall, this isn't a bad movie at all. It's really entertaining, well cast, and has some genuinely awesome moments. However, it lacks the grit of the originals and has a lot of pacing issues. I'm gonna give The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey a 7.9 out of 10. So now we've gotten to the peak of this new trilogy. The Desolation of Smaug is awesome. This is exactly the kind of stuff I wanted out of these Hobbit films. This movie is very exciting and very action-packed. The action still does feel a bit CG, specifically that barrel action scene, but it's just so cool and fun that you can't help but enjoy it. The cast is once again really solid, and they brought back Orlando Bloom as Legolas, who was really great in this, although he does look way older than he did in the movies that take place after this. They also brought on Evangeline Lilly, who was pretty badass. However, there is this shoehorned-in love story between her and that one dwarf, which isn't horrible, but I could have done without it. The whole segment with Bard in the human town was pretty cool, but it did drag on for a little bit. However, it does lead into...
Come now, don't be shy. Step into the light.
Yes, Smaug, who, I'm just gonna say it, is the best movie dragon of all time. He's huge, he's terrifying, he's threatening, he's intimidating in every way imaginable. The CGI on him looks amazing, and unlike a lot of the other stuff, he feels like he's real, and that he's actually there with Martin Freeman. Benedict Cumberbatch does a great job voicing him, couldn't have picked a better choice. Now there's also this whole side quest with the Necromancer, which is a bit of a setup for Lord of the Rings, and that whole thing was pretty interesting. That being said, I don't think it really had to be there. Again, 3 movies from 1 book. So ultimately, this is the best Hobbit movie, and it's close to the original trilogy for me. It isn't perfect, but it shows that Peter Jackson still got it. I'm pretty sure in my review of this, which is one of the first videos I ever made, I gave this an 8 out of 10, but at this point, my rating system has shifted a bit, so now I'm going to say The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is a solid 9.1 out of 10. Now, Escalation says that this should have been the best, most awesome, triumphant conclusion to this trilogy. And was it? Not really. I don't get how this went wrong. Some of the best parts of the LOTR movies are those great battle sequences. A whole movie of that? Sure, that sounds fun, but that's the problem. There is so much battle and fighting in this that eventually just gets boring. Maybe it's because it looks kind of noticeably computer generated, but it just gets exhausting and uninteresting towards the end. You'd think watching a ton of epic battle would be fun as hell, but with this movie, not really. It isn't like there isn't anything to enjoy here. Bilbo is still great, but another problem is that he's underused. This should be about him, but he's practically a supporting character. Some of the action is also really cool. There are some great moments, but there's just too much stuff going on. Also, the last movie set up this whole epic thing with Smaug in the town, and then it's just the first 10 minutes of this. There's also that dwarf-elf romance that just is not that engaging, and there's also this kind of annoying comic relief guy from Lake Town who just shouldn't have been in this. So this is the low point of these movies. It isn't the worst thing ever, but it's just very bland. Some of the battle stuff is cool, but it wears you down to the point where it's just things moving on a screen. It's got its moments, and I certainly wouldn't compare this to the prequels like a lot of people have, but I'm still giving it a 6.5 out of 10. So now it's time for the ruling. The best and the worst. The best, I have to go with Return of the King. No other movie in the series hit me on the same emotional level as that one. And the worst is going to have to be the Battle of 5 Armies. It isn't awful, but it's overstuffed and could have been cut down. So those were my thoughts on the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. Which is your favorite and least favorite? Or rank them from best to worst in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram at BHL_Hudson, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.